The First Amendment as a whole is a very commonly discussed topic in the modern political environment, and with good reason. It's one of the most important freedoms that each citizen has, the freedom of speech. However, the First Amendment isn't actually just as simple as the freedom of speech. There are a lot of minuscule parts of it that a lot of people might not know, which is what we're going to be discussing today. The actual First Amendment, in written form when it was originally made, is as following. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of people peacefully to assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. In simple terms, this effectively means the following 5 things. Freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, and freedom to petition the government. And also technically a 6th freedom that isn't in direct writing, but we'll get to that later. So in the most simplest terms, you can say what you want and the government can't really do much about it. But how far can this go? Can you make threats and be protected by the First Amendment? Do you have these rights no matter where you go, and how old are you? What about at school? Do parents and teachers have any decision on whether or not you can exercise your right to freedom of speech? Well, that's where things get a bit trickier. It's questions like these that make the First Amendment a lot more complicated than one would think. Let's discuss 17 more minuscule facts about the First Amendment that you might not know. Number 1. The First Amendment is also a part of the Bill of Rights, which is the first ever 10 amendments added to the Constitution. They were all put into effect on the same day, December 15th, 1791. Number 2. The First Amendment does protect students while they're at school. This was decided in Tinker versus Des Moines Independent Community School District, 1969, when the Supreme Court ruled that students nor teachers shed their constitutional rights to freedom of speech or expression at the schoolhouse gate. This also goes for most student and teacher behavior when it comes to off-campus activity, but that can get a little bit shaky when it comes into things like bullying. Number 3. Since the First Amendment only protects citizens from censorship by government officials, private schools and private school teachers have a lot more leeway when it comes to punishing students for their on- and off-campus speech. Number 4. As stated earlier, the First Amendment lists 5 freedoms that each citizen has, which I'll put on screen now. However, what isn't deliberately stated in writing, but is also considered protected as a fundamental right, is the freedom of association. This is manifested commonly through the right to join a trade union, debating societies, political parties, clubs, religious organizations, and more. Number 5. While it's not protected for government officials, i.e. public school teachers, to endorse or promote a specific religion, it is allowed and protected by the First Amendment to teach about them and learn about them in classes. Number 6. Despite the federal order that was recently made by the current president, Donald J. Trump, burning the American flag is a protected constitutional right that is protected by the First Amendment. Specifically when done on private property, though. Don't go burning down someone else's American flags. That's arson. The right to do so was upheld in the federal court case of Texas versus Johnson in 1989. Number 7. Students have a direct right to refuse to pledge allegiance to the flag in a classroom setting. This was decided by the U.S. Supreme Court in the landmark decision West Virginia State Board of Education versus Barnett, 1943. Number 8. The First Amendment prohibits police officers and other government officials from restricting of citizens' free speech activities. That means if you are peacefully protesting and simply expressing your opinion, the police and the government do not have the right to prevent you from doing so. Number 9. Despite popular belief, threats of any kind are not protected by the First Amendment. This includes direct threats to groups of people, one person, religious organizations, threats of domestic terrorism, and more. Number 10. The First Amendment does not protect an individual's right to publish material that invades another person's privacy. In other words, you cannot use your own freedom of speech to restrict somebody else's freedom of privacy. Number 11. The First Amendment also does not protect an individual's right to publish material that violates somebody else's copyright. So no, pirating is still against the law. Number 12. If you are going to publish a TV segment or release a newspaper article and it can be considered highly controversial, you are not required to get a government official to review it before publishing it. This is specifically only for government officials. Obviously, if your boss wants to see what you're about to publish, you should probably show him. But other than that, it does apply to national journalism and the US government as a whole. Number 13. Being a part of the press does not give journalists the right to invade or trespass on somebody else's private property. This includes trespassing, breaking into cabinets, hacking into computers, purchasing things that are against the law, planting illegal bugs, and more. The press does not have a get-out-of-jail-free card in terms of breaking the law in order to get a story out. Number 14. Although there is obviously some control, a public school principal or a public school board does not have unlimited authority on what does or doesn't go on a school newspaper. This was established in the Supreme Court case of Bazaar v. Fortune 1973, where it was said that a public school is clearly an arm of the state, and this single fact will always distinguish it from the purely private publisher as far as censorship rights are concerned. Number 15. Believe it or not, Satanism is a protected religion by the First Amendment. Now, obviously not in direct writing. They weren't like, oh yeah, Satanism, that's awesome, let's protect that. No. Rather, it is under the umbrella term of freedom of religion. The First Amendment does not permit the government to selectively choose which religions or churches it will protect based on their beliefs, popularity, or general acceptance. Number 16. The First Amendment states that it is unconstitutional to allow the majority an opportunity to vote away an individual's or a group of individuals' First Amendment rights, no matter how rare, controversial, or unpopular their beliefs might be. This means that a group, even if they are the majority, cannot vote to decide that a few people are no longer allowed to express their beliefs. Number 17. The First Amendment does not protect an individual's rights to release misleading or slandering information about people or products. And that's everything. The First Amendment, while sounding simple without further analysis, is a very complex and important right that each citizen has. It is a common point for discussion on both sides of the political spectrum, especially in the modern day and modern political environment. It's important to remember that without the First Amendment, we likely wouldn't be able to discuss anything at all. That's why, while I think all amendments are equal in importance, I believe the First Amendment is the one that all citizens should have the most complex understanding about. That's all I wanted to talk about. I hope you all have an amazing day, and I will see you next time.